Maybe what you call love is not truly love, but a quiet need to not feel alone, an almost invisible attempt to fill an inner space that has never really been seen. And perhaps the hardest part is realizing that this happens without you noticing, because it feels natural, it even seems beautiful. It looks like care, but deep down, something inside you is asking for attention. Have you ever felt that you need someone more than you would like to admit? As if their presence calms something you cannot understand, and their absence awakens a discomfort that should not feel so intense. It is strange, because on the outside everything looks normal, but inside something tightens. Something asks for constant reassurance. Something fears silence. You find yourself waiting for responses, messages, signals, as if the other person had the power to stabilize you, and when they pull away, even for a short time, something inside you becomes disorganized. It is not just longing, it is restlessness, it is anxiety, it is a feeling of emptiness that slowly grows and that you try to hide even from yourself. You try to justify it. You say it is because you care, because you love. But there is a very subtle line between loving and needing, and it is almost never noticed, because no one teaches how to recognize it. No one talks about this kind of dependency that does not shout, that does not appear in an obvious way, but lives in the details, in repetitive thoughts, in the need to be seen, in the constant search for validation. And the more you try to control it, the more it escapes, the more it intensifies, as if something inside you is trying to be heard. But you keep looking outward, always outward, as if the answer were in the other, when perhaps it never was. And it is at this silent point that the conflict begins. A conflict that cannot be solved with quick answers, because it was not born from the other. It was born within you, and it is still there, waiting for you to finally look at it, without running away, without disguising it, without calling love something that might be something else, something deeper, something older, something you have not yet named, and perhaps never truly faced. There is a pattern that repeats without noise, like an echo that always returns to the same place. You get involved, you give yourself, and in the beginning, everything feels light, natural, almost perfect. But over time, something changes, not on the outside, but inside you. A restlessness begins to appear, small at first, almost unnoticeable, but constant. You begin to observe more, to interpret more, to feel more than before, as if every gesture from the other carried a greater meaning, as if every silence were a threat. And without realizing it, you are no longer living the relationship. You are trying to sustain something inside yourself, something that depends on that bond to exist. It is like looking into a mirror, but not seeing the other, instead seeing what is missing in you. And then you try to keep that reflection intact. At any cost, you avoid conflict. You swallow your feelings. You adapt too much, all to not lose what in truth is not the other. It is what the other represents, and that becomes a cycle. You connect, you attach, you lose yourself, and when everything ends, or threatens to end, the pain feels disproportionate, because it is not only about the relationship, it is about the emptiness that returns, stronger, more visible, as if something had been taken from you. But nothing was taken. It was never complete before, and that is why you search again. Another person, another bond, another chance to feel what you believe is love, but the pattern continues. Faces change, but the feeling remains the same need, the same fear, the same silent dependency. And perhaps the hardest part is realizing that this is not weakness. It is repetition. It is an internal movement that has not yet been understood. And as long as it is not seen, it continues to happen, like an automatic reflex, like a cycle that feeds itself, and that only reveals itself when you begin to look inward, without avoiding, without blaming, without escaping. Simply observing what repeats and why. At some point in this process, something begins to make sense, not as a logical explanation, but as an inner recognition, a perception that arises without effort, as if you begin to see what has always been there, but was never named within analytical psychology. This movement is not seen as a mistake, but as an expression of the unconscious. What you seek in the other often belongs to you, but has been projected. It is as if parts of you, unrecognized, unlived, unintegrated, find in the other a place to exist, and that is why the connection feels so intense, so necessary, because it is not only about the other, it is about you meeting yourself outside of yourself, without realizing it. Carl Jung expressed this clearly. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But it is not only what irritates, it is also what attracts, what fascinates, what feels essential. All of that carries something of yours, something that has not yet been integrated. And when you depend emotionally on someone, there is an unconscious attempt to keep that projection alive. Because without it, you feel that you lose something, but what is lost is not the other. It is the connection with that part of yourself. And that creates anguish, confusion. The feeling of emptiness returns, because what you placed outside never stopped being yours. And it is at this point that something changes, not in the external world, but in the way you look. You begin to realize that the intensity did not come only from the relationship, but from what you carried inside, and that now begins to reveal itself, not as a problem, but as an invitation, a silent invitation to recognize, to reclaim, to integrate what should never have been abandoned. When you begin to look at this without rush, without the need to solve it immediately, something inside you slows down, not because everything is resolved, but because something has been recognized, and that changes the rhythm. You no longer seek with the same urgency, not because you stopped feeling, but because you began to understand where what you feel comes from. And that creates space, an inner space that did not exist before, or that was too crowded, filled with expectations, with fears, with attempts to control. Now there is a different silence. A silence that does not frighten, a silence that holds. You still connect, you still engage. But something has changed in the quality of that connection. It is no longer an attempt to fill, but a possibility to share. And that is subtle, almost imperceptible, but deeply transformative. Because when you stop seeking in the other what is yours, the relationship stops being a necessity and becomes an encounter between two worlds, and not an attempt to complete what is missing. And even if moments of doubt still appear, of insecurity, they no longer have the same weight, because now you recognize where they come from. And that removes their power to dominate you. You observe, you feel, but you do not lose yourself. And in this state, something organizes itself, without effort, without force, like the sea calming after a storm, not because someone controlled the waves, but because the wind stopped. And deep within, there is only presence. If this reflection touched something in you, write in the comments the word reconnexion, because it is in reconnection that what we once searched for outside begins to be recognized within us.